So, hello everybody, I'm Kevin. I'm one of the directors here at Kitronik, and today I'll be doing a tech talk for you. I'm on my own, but I'll be looking to cover off the new Python editor that's been developed by the Microbit Foundation. This is a totally different editor to the Microsoft MakeCode editor for the Microbit. So I have a Microbit here, I'm sure you've all seen in the past. And it's designed to be a very easy introduction to Python for people that are transitioning from Microsoft MakeCode and block-based coding through to textual coding using Python. And then obviously you can go on and probably do more complex Python programs in the future on different platforms. So so as I said, it's been designed by the Microbit Foundation itself. It's one of their products. It's really simple to use. Like MakeCode, it's a web-based, so a browser-based coding platform, so you don't have to install anything. So if you're working on a school network where maybe installing software onto computers is a bit of a challenge, you don't have any of those worries. You just have to go to a browser address, which I'll show you in a second, and it all sits there, and you code within the browser window itself. So that's really easy. And the age group it's sort of targeted at is this 11 to 14 year old. So it's people that have probably used things like block coding, programmed in Microbit using MakeCode in the past. They've maybe tried a little bit of the Python coding that you can do within MakeCode, but they want to transition to doing larger Python programs in an easy way. And there's a lot of features within this editor that make it very easy for people beginning with Python coding, and I'll show you those today as we take a look at the Python editor. Now, I'm not going to do any really complicated or difficult Python programs today. That's not the aim of this video. This video is just sort of targeted to tell you where to find it, showing you some of the basic features, showing you how it can be used, how it can connect it to a Microbit, and how you can transfer some programs over. In the future, we hope to do some more in-depth programs, and I'll probably get maybe some of our engineers here that have used Python for many years to come and be involved in those. Okay, so if we start off, I'll show you where you can find the editor itself. Give me 1 second. So here is the Microbit Foundation's homepage, as you can see, and then we have this come to the right window, have this bit up here called Let's Code, and that's where you can find all of the browsers. So it is highlighted here at the top. Whether that will be there forever, I'm not sure, but you can see here we have the Microsoft MakeCode editor, and if we go down, and again you'll see the Python editor itself. So there is a guide here. If you needed a guide at some point and you wanted to refer back and get some information, that might be helpful for you. But by clicking on this button here, it will launch us into the Python editor itself. So I'm going to do that now. So just to let you know, obviously it's a web-based editor. So the good thing about this is you can use it on lots of different platforms. So I'm using it today on a PC using Chrome. You could use it on a PC using Edge, that's fine. But you could also use it on Chromebooks, you could use it on Mac, anything with a browser, that's fine. I am going to show you a little bit how to connect and then send directly to a Microbit using this button here at the bottom. Now, to use that, you really do need to be using Chrome or the Edge browser. You can still program in other things like a Mac and Safari and things. All that would happen is when you save the file, it would download a hex file onto your Mac, which you then just transfer to the Microbit, which would appear as a removable device. So just because you're using Mac doesn't mean you can't use this editor. They're all fine to use. Okay, yeah. So like I say, it's web-based. I've got this open now. This is like an introduction. So as you can see, it's already loaded some code in here that we can delete if we don't want to, but it's an example of a program. So at the moment, we've just got a while true loop that displays a heart image, and then it waits for a second. So this is 1,000 milliseconds, and then displays some text hello. So this is a little default program, and then for those of you that are used to MakeCode, this probably in this top corner it will look very familiar where we have a simulator. So even if you don't have an actual Microbit, you can use this simulator here to try out your program. So maybe you have students that want to go away and work on their programs at home in their own spare time, but maybe don't have access to a Microbit. That's not a problem. With this simulator, you can still go away, develop your programs and test them on a Microbit without having one, so just in the same way as you could within MakeCode. This is what's really good, because a lot of Python editors you wouldn't have this function, you wouldn't have a simulator, so it's a great little thing to have. So if I click this play now, so you can see it's just on what the text said. So it's displayed an image of a heart, and then it's displaying it's scrolling the text hello across that screen. So okay, so that's a little sort of starting point. The name of the program is changed up at the top here. So if I want to edit the name, at the moment it's an untitled project, but I can give this a name. So we could call this Tech Talk, which is what we're doing here today. Save that. We've now named that program, so it's not this undefined thing anymore. It's there. And if we want to save it, I can click save. And as we say here, this file's now been downloaded into the downloads folder. I can move it to a different folder should I wish. That's fine. And if I wanted to save a program and come back and reopen in the future, I can do that. So yeah, you can use it to open and continue editing later. So if I wanted to open a file, again, I'd click open, I'd go to my downloads folder, and there you go, it sits at the very top there, Tech Talk. So it's a simple way of, so you can name your program and you can save those programs really, really easily that way. And then another thing I'm going to show you is how to connect it to a microbit. So we use this bit at the bottom here. So if I want to send my program to an actual microbit, I want to probably connect that first, and then every time I want to send it, I just have to click this send to microbit button. It's really, really easy. So to do that, I'm going to click on this bit here, and it's going to tell me how to do this. So there we go. First thing it's asked me to do is to connect a cable to a microbit. So obviously you need a microbit for this to happen. So I'm going to do that now. So I've plugged my microbit in. A little beep. And then I'm going to follow the instructions. So what this is going to do is it's going to ask me to select a microbit that I want to transfer to, and the reason there's a list like this is because you could possibly have more than one connected. At the moment I don't, so only one would appear in the list. So if I click next, there we go, there's the microbit I want to connect to, which I've done. So it's now telling me my microbit is ready to flash. So that means it's ready to flash with the program that we've got in this text window. So I'm going to start by doing that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button in a second. So send to microbit. I'm going to just show you what this looks like. So here's my demonstration camera with my microbit plugged in. On the back here, there's a little LED. This one here that shows me when it's connected to the USB and when it's being programmed. So I'm going to go back to my window now. I'm going to click send. You can see it's flashing, and that's upload that program. So now, it's a little bit tricky to see in here, we get the angle right. That's scroll the text hello, and then it puts the heart on, and it's going back to scroll the text hello. So that is doing exactly what this simulator would do in the corner here. So it shows you that the two things are in sync, so we can show on the simulator, it works, and then we can then transfer that over to a microbit and see it in real life. Okay. There were a few other little bits in this browser, this editor that might be helpful for you. I'm assuming most people will be coding in English. Certainly the Python code will be in English, but if you are based in a different country and you want to have some of the instructions in a different language, it might make it helpful for you. You can select different languages. Now you notice that I've clicked down this bottom left hand corner here where there's a settings icon. I've clicked language, and then I can select. So it's defaulted to English, but if you wanted it in French or Chinese or Dutch or one of the languages that is available here, you can select that from here, and then it will all look different. Okay. Yeah. So why is this editor really good for young students, or they're sort of 11 to 14-year-old students, and maybe what is different to a normal Python editor? So if you can imagine a normal Python editor, generally they're pretty much a blank window like you would see in the center here. You wouldn't have these bits on the left or similar to the right, and the user would type in the Python commands and develop a Python program. And that's great if you know what you're doing, or you've got reference material to work from. But for those of you that are maybe starting out, haven't used Python in the past, or you maybe want to have an easy way of exploring some of the Python features that relate to the microbit, that's where this editor is really, really useful. So what we have here is predefined reference elements. So they're great. So if I show you some of these now, I'm going to start by clicking in display. And then we have snippets of code that can be dragged. See, it says it's now highlighted the text drag and drop, that can be dragged and dropped into a user's program. And these are pre-written. So at the moment here, it tells you what it's going to do. So you can read a bit more if you want. There are lots of built-in images that you can show on your microbits display. So at the moment, this snippet of code here would show a heart. So it shows, this is the Python code in the Python syntax, display.show brackets image.heart. So that's a correct piece of Python code. And then the reason it's saying sleep is so that image will stay on the display for a minimum of 0.4 of a second, or so there's 1,000 milliseconds in a second, and 400 milliseconds is 0.4 of a second. We can drag and drop this, should we wish, then into our program. So we can just drop it in, and that's as simple as that. So it's really easy for someone who wants to try and do things maybe with images or text. So here, we can scroll things across the display. So in this one here, we're scrolling some text that says the text score across the display. But what's also helpful is you have these drop down menus. So at the moment we're showing a heart, but if we let's say wanted to show a smile, we could select smile there, and then it's automatically changed the snippet of code that the student can drag and drop into their Python program. So I could do that now, and then if we run it on the simulator, it will show the heart. It will now do the text hello. It will then follow that up with another heart, and then it's done a smile for a very brief period of time. We can type in here, so it's drag and drop, but we can still edit all of the text that's in here. So now if I wanted to maybe show the smile for 4 seconds, so 400 milliseconds, I can just literally make that change. We can click play on the simulator again, and now what we'll see is it's going through. So it's the hello, quick heart, and now there's a smile, but that style stayed on for 4 seconds, and then it'll go back in. And we can also change these by typing. So, and it uses an autocomplete function. So if I'm writing image dot, it then gives you the automatic things you can use to finish these off with. So yeah, we can select heart out of here. So that auto completion thing also makes it extremely simple for students to get going. Yeah, and within this reference area, there's an awful lot of things you could choose. So we've got things relating to display. We've got buttons. So I'll maybe show some of these to you in a little while, whereby it relates to the buttons on the microbit. Obviously, the microbit has 2 buttons, and yet again, you can make the choice here. So we can say, has button A been pressed? Has button B been pressed? Or has button A or B been pressed? And it's changing that snippet of code there that we can drag and drop into our program. Yeah, so that was pressed, so that would be active on release. Is pressed. We can do things like count button presses, so they're all in here, super easy to use. We have things like loops, so we've got example sections of code for infinite loops, conditional loops. So let's do a loop while something is true. For loops, nested. There's a whole lots of things in. They can all be drag and dropped in. And what's really great about this reference section is that it allows students to try and find examples for themselves without having to maybe ask, or maybe to refer to a textbook. By browsing these reference examples, they can start to learn what's possible and what type of structure of code and what examples of code there are available. So yeah, we've got the loops, we've got some logic. We might do if something, then do something else. Accelerometer is great. So this is again specific to a microbit, whereby we're talking about. So the microbit has an accelerometer back, much like you'd see on a phone. I'm sure you've probably seen it before, but this can detect things like shake. It can detect it being tipped forward, Like in this, so logo up would be microbit facing up, logo down would be microbit facing down. You've got, is it being tipped left, right, all these kind of things, and you can pick those in here. So yeah, you can make use of that accelerometer as another input for the microbit. So yeah, it's great. Comments again. So comments are where you put comments into your code. So like we've got at the top here. So for those of you who aren't used to Python, if you put a hash in the front here, this like hash we'll see. So these are lines that are ignored by so they're not lines of code, but they are lines of text that the user would input that is helpful to them in the future. So if you've written something that you think that was a little bit complicated, I might want to write myself a note so then when I refer back to it in the future I can remember what I did. That's what these hashed out lines were for. So they're notes or explanations within the code that would be helpful for the user but aren't actual lines of code that are executed by the editor. We call those comments. So you've got math, list, functions, radio, light level. I mean, again, these are great. And I'm sure you probably noticed on the right hand side of the editor, to allow you to use all these things, you can simulate, for example, the microbit being shaked. You can click there, so if it's running, we could click play here and microbit would think it's being shaken. So if there's a line of code that would react to that, it would. This one simulates the light level. So we've got the light level as a number. If you want to find out about that, you can sort of click on here and get a bit more information, I'd assume. But yeah, so you can move the light level up and down. Again, the microbit might react to that. Again, for temperature, this one relates to the compass and what angle so the microbit has a compass on, again, so it knows if it's facing north or a degree of angles away from that, and you can simulate that here by dragging this around. And again, your microbit would react. This one here is a microphone. So I have a version 1 microbit here that I'm programming. It doesn't have a microphone on board, but the version 2 of a microbit does have a microphone, so you can simulate that. We've got the buttons pressed here, and then these are pins. So pin 0, pin 1, pin 2, and on version 2, this logo at the top here, this gold logo, is actually an input that you can touch. So that's going to simulate that being pressed. So you can simulate lots of things using the simulator that relate to specific features on the microbit itself. And if I go further down, when I've talked about those things that only relate to the version 2, you can see them highlighted on the editor here. So the microbit, to use this, you would need a version 2 microbit, freely available now, so there's lots around. But if you do have a version 1, you can't use these things that have the V2 on. So that'd be data logging, touching the logo, because let me just show you quickly. As you can see on this logo, it's just a yellow silkscreen. It's not this gold colour, so that's not touchable. And on the back, we don't have the speaker and the microphone because this is a version 1. But if I did have a version 2, all of those features would be freely available. And then we have all the pin related functions at the bottom here. So yeah, we could connect sound to pins as we wish to, but we can do lots of other things with these pins. So I hope this makes lots of sense, and you can see for your students how easy it would be to do. Another really good feature of this editor for me is this. Is the fact that things are highlighted in a colour that relates to something specific. So at the moment, everything that falls within this while loop is the same colour. So you would know that these elements specifically relate to that while loop. If I added in, let me add in something that's different here, like an if. That, you see how it's now a slightly different colour? So that is all within the while loop, but if I click this if loop, you can see just these bottom, that if loop and the line below called display scroll A relates to that specific if loop, and it also shows you the indentation that relates to a specific line. So obviously after the while loop we should indent everything, after an if loop we should indent everything by the defined amount. If we don't get this indentation correct, the editor's really clever, and then it actually gives you some information. So now we can see this has gone wrong. It doesn't know these bits below relate to the while loop because the indentation on display is wrong. It knows that this bottom bit's correct, but it's highlighted where the error has happened. So for students, this makes it really, really simple for them to try and find out and debug and understand why their code might not be correct. So we know here that before this display command, there's an error because it's highlighted with a little red triangle. And if I hover over this red dot, it tells us the cause of the error. So I know I've got an error. I'm going to hover over the red dot, tells me what's wrong. Okay, unexpected indent. So the indent is not right. So I can look at that and go, actually, I can see it's indented more than the line above and the line below. So if I remove that extra space, everything's back to being great. So yeah, these kind of things are helpful in giving you an idea as to where your errors are. So the student can then try and self-correct their own issues. So it could be you put an invalid value in. So this is expecting a number. Maybe if I put like, I'm going to try this, something like hashing, that knows that's not right. Argument does not match parameter. So there we go. So we know we've got to correct. We know where the error is occurring. So this is again something you don't get with all editors and something that is really, really, really helpful for people. Okay, so let me just see if there's anything else I've missed off here. So yeah, the error highlighted is there to aid the student in correcting their code. I was going to say if you hover over the dot, that's going to explain to you why an error has occurred. The code structure is really, really great in that we have these different colours that highlight elements that relate to each other. So everything that sits within that while loop is highlighted green. The bits that sit under the if loop, they're still green because they're under the while loop, as we can see on here, but only the display.scroll A relates to that if statement. So this colour coding here makes it helpful for people to understand. Maybe they think, oh, I thought that should execute within that. Well, no, because if it's not indented the correct way and it's not the right colour, then we know that it maybe relates to a different piece of logic, or in the while loop, or in a different if loop, or something like that. So we can try and bracket sections of code into areas that relate to a specific command. Okay, we see the auto completion. I've shown you that earlier. The other thing I'd like to show you is some of the ideas. So if you have students that are trying to, they're not sure what they might want to code, you can go into this ideas section here, and there's some ideas here that you could go away and try. If they all can be used on a version 1 or a version 2, except for the ones that say version 2 only, because this needs the reason this one would need a version 2 is because it needs the use of a microphone, and a microphone is only available on a version 2 of the microbit. So that's why this helpful indicator here, it shows that for you. So we could do something like a dice though. If I click on that, I can now open, I'm going to replace my code here. I'm going to open that example piece of code. It's opened in there, it's already got the name dice. What it's done, so it's also imported this function called random because it needs that, but it will do that for you. So if you wanted to use this like display show random, it would drop this import bit in the top for you in my experience. So if you were to drag and drop that in, yeah, that's that it automatically adds in these required functions at the top. So what this is going to do now is if the accelerometer has a gesture of shake, it would show a random number between 1 and 6 on the dice. So that's a great little example. We can show it on here. So at the moment nothing's being displayed on the simulator because we've not shook the microbit yet, but we can simulate that by clicking the shake button here, and we can see the number is changing. And then again, if I wanted to, I can send that to my actual microbit, which it's done incredibly fast. And if I now switch back to my demonstration camera, I can see it's displaying 5. You can just about see that. It's 5. If I shake it, now it's a 1. Now it's a 2. Now it's a 3. It's a little bit tricky. There you go. 3, 4, 1. So that's doing exactly what we'd expect. It's executing this code. So these are great starting points within the ideas section here for things that students might want to try or that you may want to do with your students. So we've got emotion badges again. You just click it open. There you go, it's loaded that for you. And we can see the nice little bits of indentation here that relate to the if statement. So if button A is pressed, show a happy face. If button B is pressed, show a sad face. Again, we could demonstrate that on here. And we can either use these buttons at the bottom here and click A or B, but we can also click those on the simulator itself. So we can click them up here. So yeah, I hope that gives everybody, let's come back to my face. I hope that gives everybody an overview of this editor, how it could be possibly used by students. To say the target age is 11 to 14. It is really, really simple. I've used a few different Python editors. I mean, I'm not a Python coder, but I've used a few different Python editors, and I must say this is one of the easiest I've used, and I can see how it would be a great starting point for students that want to progress on from block-based coding into textual languages, specifically Python. In the future, we'll hope to do a few more videos on this where we might show you some more in-depth Python programs. That'll be much longer than the ones I've shown you here today, but I just wanted to give you a flavour of what's available, the type of functions that can be, the elements within the editor that would be useful, like the indentation, the colour coding, the error reporting, all those kind of things, the example pieces of code that can be dragged out the references into programs to get you started. So I hope you've all enjoyed that. I'm just going to quick check to see if there's any questions. So yeah, the only question I had was, can you edit the code once it's been dragged over? Hopefully I've showed that to you, but obviously you can, so I'll show you again. So yeah, this is example code that you could have dragged out, and again, once you're in here, you can start again. You can delete this. You can pick from the things that are available. So it makes it a really, really great starting point. Okay, so I say we're coming up to half an hour now, so hopefully that will was just about covered everything, and it was interesting for you. If you do have any questions, please just drop those however you want to, whether it's for our socials or whether it's on YouTube itself, and we'll do our best to answer them on there for you. And I say we'll try and do some more complex stuff for you in the future that might be able to show you some bigger projects you could do with your students. Okay, take care everybody. Thank you. Bye.